Welcome to this channel, and in this video we're going to be looking at Cambridge IDCSE October-November 2024 05802 paper 2 extended. So let's go right into the paper and answer the question. So the first question says, a concert starts at 1950 and finishes 2 hours 42 minutes later. Work out the time the concert finishes. So this is a hour-minute system. So we have the hours. Let me increase this a bit. We have hours and then minutes, right? So 1950, right? And then 2 hours 42 minutes later. So that means we're gonna add 2 hours 42 minutes, right? So 50 plus 42 is 92, right? But you could see that we can get some hours from this, because you should remember that 60 minutes is equal to what? 1 hour. So 92 minutes can be written as 60 minutes plus 32 minutes. 60 plus 32 is 92, right? So we write down 32, which is in the minutes place, and then take over the 60 minutes, which is 1 hour. So move over 1 hour to this side. So 1 plus 19 is 20. 20 plus 2 is 22. So that's 22:32 p.m. or we could say 10:32 p.m. because using the 12-hour system, we could simply subtract 12. That's from the 24-hour system, right? That's still 10:32 p.m. So second question says, find the reciprocal of 1 whole 1 over 4, right? So we have to convert this to an improper fraction, right? So what happens here is 1 whole 1 over 4, and then 4 times 1 is 4, right? 4 plus 1, 4 times 1, 4, then 4 plus 1, that's 5 over 4. So the reciprocal of a number is simply 1 divided by that number. So 1 divided by 5 over 4, right? I know that when you're doing a division, what happens? You're going to switch to multiplication, and then you're going to inverse things here. So that becomes 1 times 5 over 4 then becomes 4 over 5, right? So that's 1 times 4 over 5, which is 4 over 5. And that's the reciprocal of 1 whole 1 over 4. Question 3 says, use one of the symbols less, greater, or equal to make each statement true. We have 2 over 7. Remember, calculators are allowed in this exam. So if you get a value of 2 over 7, you're going to be having 0.28571. And 0.28571 is less than 0.2861. You get that? So this is less than that, right? Then 99 over 100, you could simply use a division here, right? If 9 goes to 99, you have 11. If 9 goes to 900, you have 100. And 11 over 100 is same as 11%, because 8% is same as A over 100. So 11% is 11 over 100, which is same as 99 over 100, which we reduce to 11 over 100. So it's equal to that, right? So we have 1 cubed. 1 cubed is equal to 1 times 1 times 1, right? And that's going to be 1. And then 4 to the 0, right? It's important to know this is an index law that says that a to the 0 is equal to 1, where a is not equal to 0. So even if you have 67 to the 0, it's going to be what? 1. If it's a 1000 to the 0, it's going to be 1. So 4 to the 0 is equal to 1. You get that? So they are equal. You get that? So that's the solution to that. So 1 to the third is equal to 4 to the 0. Question 4 says, Safia has a piece of fabric of length 5.6 meters. She cuts the fabric into 2 parts with length in the ratio 3:4. Calculate the length of the longer part. Right? So this is a ratio. And the ratio is simply, you have 2 different variables. Let's say the ratio of your height and my height is 12:30. But you notice that we could bring this down to, if 2 goes here, you have 6. If 2 goes here, you have 15. 3 could go, we have 2. And 3 could go, we have 5. So what's that? What am I trying to say? So if you have the length in the ratio 3:4, that means that the original length is 3 times this, right? 3 times a particular number x, and then 4 times a particular number x, because in this case, the example I gave, we had 12:30, right? So if we break this down, it's going to be 6, and then this is going to be 15, right? So we could actually say that originally it was 6x 15x. You get that? Which was that? So 3x was the original length, 4x was the original length. So the sum of the lengths, 3x plus 4x, is going to be equal to 5.6, right? You get that? So 3x plus 4x is 7x, and then 5.6. And dividing through by 7, 5.6 divided by 7 is going to give us 0.8, right? So x is equal to 0.8. The question says, calculate the length of the longer part. And the longer part is what? 4x. So the longer part will simply be 4 times 0.8. And 4 times 0.8 is 3.2. Right? And you can see that the rule stands because the ratio 3x to 4x is same as 3 is to 4. Because if we divide 3 by x, it's still 3 over 4. So do you get that? So 3.2. So assuming you were asked for the length of the smaller part is going to be 3x. And 3 times 0.8 is going to be 2.4. Right? And you notice that if you add them together, you still have 5.6. Right? Good. Question 5 says, work out 3 and then multiply by a vector 6, negative 4. So you multiply each component by 3. So 3 times 6 is going to be 18, and 3 times negative 4 is going to be negative 12, right? So do not make the mistake of multiplying 3 by 6 alone, right? So we're asked to add those two together. 4 negative 7 is negative 3, right? And negative 1 plus 5 is same as 5 negative 1, and that's 4, right? That's it. Question 6 says, the diagram shows a right angled triangle ABC and a quadrilateral AEDC. And this is a triangle over here. And then the question goes on to say, find the value of x, value of y, value of z. So analyzing the diagram given to us, you could see that there's a straight line over here, right? And it's important to know that it angles in a straight line sum to 180 degrees. So 122 and x are on a straight line. So what's that going to be? That implies that 122 plus x is going to be equal to 180 degrees because the angles on the line sum to 180 degrees. So to get the value of x, we simply subtract 122 on both sides so that this cancels, right? Then x is equal to 180 negative 122. And 180 negative 122, we're going to have 58, right? 58 degrees. So that implies that x is 58 degrees. So let's move to y. So what do you think y is going to be? Remember, it's important to note this. When you have this symbol, they're not going to put the angle there for you. It's going to be 90 degrees. This represents a right angle. And then, remember the question says the diagram shows a right-angled triangle, right? And remember that the sum, if you've studied geometry in depth, you would know that the sum of angles in a triangle sum to 180 degrees. So we have 90 degrees over here. We have y plus 17. So the angle over here is y plus 17, and over here we have 34. So the angles in a triangle sum to 180 degrees. So therefore we're going to have 90 plus 34 plus, what's the third angle? Y plus 17. And that implies y plus 17, and then all equal to 180 degrees. So 90 plus 34 is going to give us 124 plus y plus 17, right, equal to 180 degrees. So 124 plus 17 is 141. Right? 141. And 141 plus y equals 180. To get the value of y is going to be 180 negative 141. 180 negative 141, and that is 39 degrees, right? Ensure you always cross-check your work to ensure everything is correct. So if here is 39 degrees, 39 plus 17 is going to be 56, right? And 56 plus 34 is 90. 90 plus 90 is 180 degrees. So that's the value of y. Then finally is asks us for z, and how could we get z? So you can see here that we have kind of like a quadrilateral over here. The sides 1, 2, 3, 4. It has 4 sides, and the sum of the angles in the quadrilateral sum to what? 360 degrees. Very important, right? 360 degrees. So we have 17, we have 34, we've got an x as 58, and then we need z. So since it sums up to 360 degrees, sorry, we're gonna have 17 plus 34 plus 58 plus x equals 3 plus z, right? Z equals 360. So 17 plus 34 is going to give us 51, and 51 plus 58 is going to give us 109. 109 plus z equals 360. So z is going to be equal to 360 negative 109. So 360 minus 109 is going to be 251. You get that? So we have 17, 51, and then 58. That's 109, and then 360 negative 109 is going to be 251. And you could see that it actually obeys what we got, because this is kind of like a reflex angle. It's greater than 180 degrees but less than 360 degrees. So this is very important, because you could be given larger shapes. It may not be a quadrilateral, it may be a pentagon, right? And that's why the formula n negative 2 times 180 is very important, because it gives you the sum of angles, interior angles, in a polygon, right? In this case, in the case of a triangle, it has 3 sides, right? So 3 negative 2 is 1. 1 times 180 is 180 degrees. You get that? So that gives you the sum. That's why it's 180. Then for a quadrilateral, if we substitute 4 here, that's 4 negative 2 times 180. And then that's 4 negative 2, so 2 times 180 is 360. If it's a pentagon, it's going to be 5 negative 2, which is 3, right? 3 times 180, that's 540 degrees. You get that? So in case the question brings up a shape that has more than 4 sides, you could be able to infer the total angles that you would sum to get any values they want you to get, right? So question 7 says, factorize 28x negative 35, right? So it's important you know the factors of 28, you know the factors of 35, and if you look carefully, you have a factor 7. 7 could go into 28, could go into 35, right? You get that? So that's the highest common factor. That's the way to get it. So let me not say you're actually gonna guess or something, because simply list out the factors of 28, and that's 1, 2, 4, right? And then 7. You get that? Then 14. Then if you list out that for 35, 1, 5, 7. You get that? 35. So 7 is the highest common. So when 28x divides 7, you're gonna have 4x. When 28x divides 7, we're gonna have 4x. And then when negative 35 divides 7, we're gonna have negative 5, right? Negative 35 divided 7 is negative 5, right? So 28x. So let's move to the next question. It says, Edith invests $3,000 in a savings account. The account pays simple interest at a rate of 2.6% per year. Calculate the total interest earned at the end of 3 years. So it's important you know the formula for simple interest, right? We could denote that by SI. It's equal to the principal times the rate times the time divided by 100, right? So it says, what's the total interest earned? So the principal here is what you invested, or what Edith invested in this case. So that's going to be $3,000, right? Multiplied by the rate, you have 2.6, right? 2.6 multiplied by the time at the end of 3 years, right? Then divided by 100, right? So you can see that this and this could simply cancel. This and this could simply cancel out. And then we're left with 30 times 2.6 times 3. So 30 times 2.6 times 3 is equal to 234. So the total interest earned at the end of 3 years is $234. Ninth question. It says the diagram shows part of a regular polygon. The interior angle of the polygon is 132 larger than the exterior angle. Calculate the number of sides of this polygon. So this refers to what I was explaining when we were solving this question. That's question 6, where I said the sum of interior angles sum to That's the formula given is n negative 2 times 180 degrees. So let's see that here. So you can see that this is a straight line, right? This is a straight line. You have x plus 32 over here, and then you have x. So x plus 132 plus x is going to be equal to 180 degrees because they're on a straight line, right? So x plus x is 2x, and then plus 132 equals 180, right? So 2x plus 132 and negative 132 is equal to 180 negative 132. So I'm subtracting 132 on both sides. So this cancels, and then we have 2x equals 180 negative 132 is going to be 48, right? So if we divide through by 2, 48 divided by 2 is 24. So that tells us that x is 24 degrees. So that leads to another formula we could actually use to get this, right? And that formula says that the exterior angle of a regular polygon is given by 360 divided by the number of sides. You can see the question says calculate the number of sides. So we've gotten the exterior angle, which is x, right? The angle that lies out of the shape. So 360 divided by n is going to give us that exterior angle, which we got as 24. So 360 over n, if we multiply through, we're going to have 360 equals 24n. And then dividing through by 24, 360 divided by 24 is 15. So that tells us that the shape has 16 sides. Or an alternative method is recognizing what I explained in question 6. And it's the fact that the sum of the interior angles of a polygon is n negative 2 times 180. Right? So what we got in here is x plus 32, right? That's the interior angle. So x, we got it as 24, right? So 24 plus 132 is 156. That means that each interior angle of this polygon is 156 degrees. So remember that n negative 2 times 180 is the sum, right, of interior angles. So to get for each, you divide by n. You get that? So, and that is equal to 156. So if we multiply through, this is more stressful. I just want to open your eyes to all the possible methods, right? So if we multiply through, we have 180 n negative 360 equals 156n, right? So if we take 156n over, we have 180n negative 156n, and that's going to be 24n, which is equal to, then 360 moves over, adding 360 to both sides. You can see that it still lands us where this started from. So you can see this makes it easier. So then 360 divided by 24 is 15. Question 10 says, Jacinda plays a game with her friend. She can win, lose, or draw the game. The probability that she wins the game is 0.28. Jacinda is twice as likely to draw the game as to lose the game. Work out the probability that she loses the game. Right? It says that the probability that she wins is equal to 0.28. And that Jacinda is twice as likely to draw, right, to draw the game as to lose the game. So we could therefore say, let the probability of losing be equal to x, right? Be equal to x. And it says that Jacinda is twice as likely to draw. Twice as likely to draw the game as to lose the game. So then we then find the sum. And then remember that if you have a set of events, the sum is going to be equal to 1. Just like if you say, okay, what's the probability that rain is going to fall today? It's 1 over 2. And probability it's not going to fall, it's going to be what? 1 over 2. So when you add it together, it's going to be 1. You get that? So it says Jacinda is twice as likely to draw the game as to lose the game. So then we're going to have that x plus 2x plus 0.28 is going to be equal to 1. So x plus 2x is 3x, and then 1 negative 0.28 1 negative 0.28 is 0.72. right? So that is 3x equals 0.72, and then dividing through by 3, we have 0.24. You get that? So that's the probability she loses. Remember we said let the probability that she loses be x, because it says that Jacinda is twice as likely to draw the game as to lose, So the probability of losing is x, and the probability that she draws the game is twice that of the probability of losing. That's why it says twice as likely to, right, as to losing the game. So that's 0.24. So it says B says the Jacinda plays the game 150 times. Find the expected number of times she wins. So that's simply multiplying the probability of winning by the number of times, right? So the probability of winning is 0.28, was given in the question as 0.28. So 0.28 multiplied by the number of times, right? The number of inputs, right? So 0.28 multiplied by 150 is 42. Right? So it's expected that she's going to win 42 times, right? That's the expectation based on the probability. Okay, question 11 says work out without using the calculator 5 whole 1 over 3, negative 3 whole 4 over 7, right? We have 5 whole 1 over 3, negative 3 whole 4 over 7. So we could simply subtract the whole parts. 5 negative 3 is 2, right? And then we have 1 over 3, negative 4 over 7, right? This is the fractional part. So if we get the LCM of 3 and 7 over here, if we start dividing with 3, 3 divided 3 is 1, 7 can divide perfectly, so we still write on 7, and then 7 could go, 1 can divide, so we bring down the 1, and then 7 divided 7 is 1. So 3 times 7 is 21. So the LCM here is 21. So 21 divided by 3 is 7, and then 7 times 1 is 7. Negative 21 divided by 7 is 3, and 3 times 4 is 12. So that's negative 12, and then 7 negative 12 is going to be negative 5 over 21. And then we have 2 whole negative 5 over 21. And this is not a good answer, right? Because you can see that we're subtracting 5 wholes, we're subtracting 3 wholes from 5 wholes, right? So we can be having a negative here, right? It's still the same thing, but it's not good to leave it in this form. So we could simply take a 1 from this, you get from the 2 wholes, and bring it over to the negative part of the fraction. So that's going to be 1, and then that's after you've taken a whole, so the negative, and then 1 whole negative 5 over 21 plus 1. And negative 5 over 21, and then positive 1, can be written as 1 whole negative 5 over 21 plus 1, and 1 can be written as 21 over 21, right? And negative 5 plus 21 is same as 21 negative 5, and that's 16. That's 1 whole 16 over 21, and that's the final answer. 12 says, solve the simultaneous equations. You must show all your working. Right, so this, we could call this equation 1, and we could call this equation 2. And then you could use a kind of like an elimination over here, right? Multiply, because you could see here, right? So the trick here is look at the terms of the equations. You can see here they have 2y, you have 6y. You can see that 6 is a multiple of 2. So you could multiply the second equation through by 3 so that the positive 6y could eliminate the negative 6y, because if we multiply 2y by 3, we have negative 6y, and when positive 6y adds to negative 6y, you're going to have 0. So you're going to cancel the y coefficient. Coefficient of y is going to be 0, and then we solve for x. So if we multiply equation 2, if we multiply 2 by 2, that is equation 2 by 2, is going to be 3x times 2 is 6x, and then negative 2y times 3. Okay, that's a mistake. Wait a minute. So this is 6y. So sorry for that. This is 6y. This is negative 2y. So we need to multiply negative 2y by 3, right? Sorry for that. So you're going to multiply 2 by 3 in order to get 6y to cancel out. So if you multiply equation 2 by 3, you're going to have 9x negative 6y equals negative 17 times 3 is negative 51, right? So you multiplied each term. So if we add this to this, 5x plus 9x is 14x. 6y, negative 6y is going to be 0. So you see cancels out, right? And then 9 and negative 51 is negative 42. So dividing through by 14, negative 42 divided by 14 is going to be negative 3, right? And that's the value of x. So that tells us that x is equal to negative 3. So with the value of x, you could take any of the equations and substitute. So with 3x negative 2y equals negative 17, we could substitute the value of x, and that's 3 into negative 3. Negative 2y equals negative 17. Right, so 3 negative 3 is negative 9. Negative 2y equals negative 17. So when this crosses, when we add 9 to both sides, we have negative 17 plus 9. And negative 17 plus 9 is negative 8. So we have negative 2y equals negative 8. And dividing through by negative 2, we have 8 divided 2, and that's 4. So we have that x is negative 3 and y is 4. Let's move to question 13. A sequence has nth term 3n squared negative 1. Find the second term of this sequence, or in this sequence. So the nth term is what gives you any term of that sequence. So all you simply need to do, the nth term has been given as 3n squared negative 1. So you ask for the second term. So it's simply to substitute 2 anywhere you have n. So if we substitute 2, that's going to be 3 into 2 squared negative 1, right? And that's going to be 2 squared is 4, and then negative 1. So 3 times 4 is 12. 12 negative 1 is 11. So that's the second term. We could be asked for the fifth term. All you simply got to do is substitute 5 and then ensure that the substitution is correct. Okay, B says the table shows the first 5 terms of a sequence of sequences A and B. So the first sequence, we have negative 6, we have negative 2, we have 2, we have 6, we have 10. So you can see here that there's a constant difference of a positive 4. You see that? So in the Cambridge Igcse Extended, you should be able to detect the sequence given to you. Your different possible sequence, you could be given an arithmetic progression, a geometric progression, a quadratic sequence, or a cubic sequence. You get that? So watch out. So what's the rule in an arithmetic progression? There's a constant difference. And what's that constant difference here? Positive 4. Positive 4. Negative 2 plus 4 is 2. 2 plus 4 is... And then it's important to know that the nth term of an arithmetic progression is simply a plus n negative 1d. Right? Where a is the first term of a sequence. Right? In this case, negative 6. And then plus, you're asked for the nth term. Right? So you don't need to substitute anything for n. And then the d is the common difference between the terms, which is 4. So we're going to have negative 6 plus 4n. 4 times n is 4n. Then 4 times negative 1 is negative 4. Then negative 6 negative 4 is negative 10. So we have 4n negative 10 as the nth term of the sequence. Now, the second term of the sequence, I would want to explain that separately. The second sequence, which is sequence B, you can see that there is no constant difference. There is no common ratio here. There is no common ratio here. You get that? If it's like in a GP. So we have 2 other types of sequences you could be tested for in this exam. So we have the quadratic and we have the cubic. So all you simply need to do is that when you've tested, you've seen it's not an arithmetic progression, there's no constant difference, and it's not a GP, you should then suspect for the quadratic or cubic. Now, if it's quadratic, it simply means that the second differences between the terms in the sequence is going to be constant. If it's cubic, the third differences. So let's start. 17 negative 3 is 14, right? That's the first difference. We're looking at the first differences. So 55 negative 17 is 38. 129 negative 55 is 74, and then this negative this is going to be 122. That's 251 negative 129. So when we then get the difference, that's the second difference is now. We have 38 negative 14, and that's going to be 24. This minus 74 negative 38, and that's 36. And then 122 negative 74 is going to give us 48. And then this is the second difference, right? You can see it's not constant. If it was constant, we'll then say it's a quadratic sequence. But now, if we get the differences again, we have 12, you have 12. So you can see there's a constant difference of 12. So now, there are 4 important formulas you need to know. So with this, it has then showed us that it's a cubic sequence. And how does a cubic sequence look like? The nth term of a cubic sequence is given by an cubed plus bn squared plus cn plus d. Right? So your job is to get the values of a, b, c, and d. And how do you get that? Right? You want to start writing 4 different equations because a, unlike the arithmetic sequence, a does not represent the first term, right? They're just constants. Do you get that? So the first you have to realize here is to look at the first term. The first term of the sequence here is 3. So c1 is going to be equal to a plus b plus c, because if we substitute n as 1, we have a plus c plus d. Now, let me show you what you're going to do in the exam. It's important to note that 6a is going to be equal to that constant difference. To that constant third difference. 6a is going to be equal to that constant third difference, and in this case it's 12. So if we divide through by 6, we're going to have 2. So a is going to be 2. Let's continue over here. And then it's also important to note that 12a plus 2b is going to be equal to the first-second difference. The first-second difference. And then we've gotten a as 2, right? So it's going to be 12 into 2 plus 2b equal to 24. And then 12 times 2 is 24. And then plus 2b equals 24. Right? So 24 negative 24 is 0. So 2b equals 0. That implies that b is 0. Right? And then it's also important to note that the first difference is 7a plus 3b plus c. And that's 14. The first of the set of first differences. And that's 14. So if this is equal to 14, remember we've gotten the value of a and b. We've gotten a as 2 and we've gotten b as 0. So 7, we substitute 2 here, you're going to have 14, and then plus, we've gotten b as 0, so plus 0 plus c equals 14. So you can see that c is still going to be 0, right? Because if 14 plus c equals 14, that means c is 0. And then remember that a plus b plus c plus d, which is the first term, c1, and the first term is what? 3. 3. You get that? 3. And then when we substituted 1 into the an cubed plus bn squared plus cn plus d, we had 3. That's a plus b plus c plus d, which is equal to 3. So we got a as 2, right? And then we got b as 0, we got c as 0. So if 2 plus 0 plus 0 plus d is equal to 3, that implies that d is going to be equal to 3 negative 2, which is 1. So based on this, we can then substitute. We've gotten a as 2. So we have 2n cubed plus 0n squared. We've gotten b as 0, c as 0, and d as 1. So we're simply going to have 2n cubed plus 1. Right? So please, if you need a proof of this, please do also comment proof in the comment section so that I can create a video where I prove all these, right? The fact that that constant difference that you get when you keep getting the differences, the first, the second, and the third differences is going to be equal to 6 times a in accordance to an cubed plus bn squared plus cn plus d, which is the n term, and then 12a plus 2b is equal to the first third difference, right? And 7a plus 3b plus c is going to be equal to the first, right, of the first differences. 14, 38, 74, 122. Thank you. So please comment proof in the comment section if you want to understand how these formulas are gotten so that you understand it better. So question 14 says, two solid statues are mathematically similar. The smaller statue has a height of 12 cm and the larger statue has a height 15 cm. The larger statue has a mass of 2.5 kg. The density of steel is 8 grams per cm cube. Calculate the volume of the smaller statue. And it has been given to us in the question that density is going to be equal to mass over volume. So we could therefore, we're given the mass of the larger statue and we're given the density. So we could therefore get the volume. So if we want to get a volume, we could cross multiply, and that's going to be the density multiplied by the volume is going to be equal to the mass, and that implies that the volume is equal to the mass divided by the density, right? A mass divided by the density. But notice something here, that the unit of the density here is grams per cm cube, and the mass is in kg. So you have to convert the mass to grams, and it's important to note that 1000 grams is going to be equal to 1 kg. So that implies that 2.5 kg is going to be equal to 2.5 times 1000, which is 2500 grams. So the volume is going to be 2500 divided by 8, which is the density. So 2500 divided by 8 is going to give us 312.5. 312.5. So that's the volume of the larger statue. We've gotten it from density equals mass over volume. Agreed. Now, if you've watched my previous videos, we've solved questions that have the same idea, right? And it's the fact that we could relate the length to the volume, and that's what we call the linear scale factor. And then if we want to scale this linear scale factor and then get the ratio of the volume, is going to be equal to the cube of this length, which is the height in this case, right? And the cube of this length is going to give us the volume ratio. So you could say that the volume of the larger over the volume of the smaller is going to be equal to the length, that's in this case the height. The height's kind of like a length, so the height of the larger divided by the height of the smaller raised to the third, right? So if it was area it was talking about, it's going to be HL over HS squared, because that's going to give us the area scale factor. Now this is the volume, and then when you cube the linear scale, is going to give you that same volume scale. So the volume of the larger is 312.5, and divided by the volume of the smaller, which we're looking for, right? And the height of the larger, it's been given as 15, right? While the height of the smaller is given to us as 12, and then we cube it. So we could multiply through by the volume of smaller. So 312.5 is going to be equal to Vs 15 over 12 all cubed, right? So to get the value of Vs, it's simply going to be 312.5 divided by 15 over 12 to the third, right? We're dividing through by 15 over 12 to the third. So if you compute that on your calculator, I'm going to have 15 over 12 to the third. If you compute this on your calculator, it's going to give you 160. So that tells us that the volume of the smaller statue is 160 cm cubed, right? I just wrote all this so that you could understand. When it comes for the exam, you do well to minimize your space. Just simply get the density, right? Get the volume, and then understand that the volume is proportional to the cube of the linear scale, right? When you cube them, right? The cube of the linear scales. Calculate the curved surface area of the cylinder. Give your answer in terms of pi. Now this is a sphere, and it's been given to us that the volume of this sphere is 4 over 3 pi r cubed. So 4 over 3 pi r cubed, and then if we calculate the volume, it's going to be 4 over 3 times pi times the radius is 6, right? 6 to the third. and that's going to be 4 over 3 times pi times 216. And 216 could divide 3, and then we're going to have 72, right? So when 72 multiplies 4, we're going to have 288. 288 pi, right? Don't forget the pi. Then, the question says that the volume of the sphere is equal to the volume of the cylinder. Now it's important to note that the volume of the cylinder is equal to pi r squared h, where h is the height of the cylinder, r is the radius, and in this case the radius of the cylinder is r, right? So we're gonna have pi r squared h is gonna be equal to 288 pi. So this pi and this pi cancels, right? And then the height of the cylinder is given as 18, right? So r squared equal to r squared times 18 equals 288. So 288 divided by 18, we divide 3 by 18, we're going to have 16, right? So that tells us that r squared is equal to 16, and then r will be equal to the square root of 16, and that's going to be 4 cm. So that tells us that the radius of this cylinder is 4 cm. You get that? Nice. Now it says, what's the curved surface area? The curved surface, right, which is this, right? This, the curve, because this is the part that was curved, right, was folded, and that's given by 2 pi rh, because the distance around the circle is 2 pi r, and then multiplied by the height. So it's kind of like folded, and then we have something like a rectangle, 2 pi r, and then the height, and then that's the area, right? Because it's kind of like something that was kind of like, I'll say rectangular, and then it was folded, right? And that led to the circumference and then times the height. So that's the formula, 2 pi rh. So that's 2 pi multiplied by the radius, which is 4, multiplied by the height, which is 18. So 4 times 18 is 72. 72 times 2 is 144. So we have 144 pi. And that's the curved surface area of the shape. Question 17 says, solve 3x squared negative 7x negative 16. You must show all your workings and give your answers correct to 2 decimal places. Right? So it's important you know the quadratic formula that says that x is going to be equal to negative b plus or negative square root of b squared negative 4ac all over 2a. Right? And in accordance to the general quadratic form, we have ax squared plus bx plus c, right, equal to 0. So in this case, a is 3, right? B is negative 7 and C is negative 16. So we can simply substitute. So B is negative 7. So we have negative of negative 7 plus or negative square root of B, which is negative 7 all squared, negative 4 times A. What's A? 3 over here. And then C, which is negative 16. Then all over 2A, right? What's A? 3 over 6. So negative 7 is 7. So that's 7 plus or negative square root of negative 7 all squared is going to be positive 49. And then negative 4 times 3 is negative 12. And negative 12 times negative 16 is going to be 192. And then divided by 6. So that's going to be 7 plus or negative square root of 49 plus 192 is going to be equal to 241, then all over 6. So x is going to be equal to 7 plus 2 square root of 241 divided by 6, or x is equal to 7 negative square root of 241 divided by 6. But the question says give your answers correct to 2 decimal places. So 7 plus root 241 is 22.524, and then if we divide that by 6, we have 3.7540. Keeps going. And then for the second one, we have 7 negative square root of 241, and then divided by 6, and that is negative 1.4206. Now we could actually, the question is correct to 2 decimal places. So look at the number, that's we look at the third decimal place and use that to approximate, right? So correct. So after the second decimal place, which is 5, we have 4. And 4 is not up to 5, so we cannot approximate it. So we still have 3.75. And then for negative 1.4206, the number in the third decimal place is 0, and 0 can round this up because it's not up to 5, so we're going to have negative 1.42. So x is 3.75, or x is negative 1.42. Question 18 says, g of x is equal to 4 raised to x plus 3. Find x when g of x is 1. So g of x is equal to 4 to the x plus 3, right? It says find x when g of x is 1. So 4 to the x plus 3 equals 1. That now leads us to the rule that says 4 to the 0 is equal to 1, right? That for a number a raised to 0 is going to be equal to 1, where a is not equal to 0. So we could write 1 in terms of the base, right? If this was maybe 5 to the x plus 3, you write 1 as 5 to the 0, so that if they then have the same base, you could then cancel and then solve the equations above. So we could then write this as 4 to the x plus 3 is equal to the 4 to the 0, and then we could compare this and this. So we then say that x plus 3 is 0, and then plus 3 negative 3 is equal to 0 negative 3. 0 negative 3 is negative 3, so we have x equals negative 3. Okay, the next question then says find g inverse of 1 over 16. So g of x is given as 4 to the x plus 3. So if we want to get the inverse of this function, what do? We make x the subject, right? That's the step in getting the inverse. Make x the subject. In order to make x the subject, we get the natural logarithm of both sides, and that's going to be ln of g of x is equal to the ln of 4 to the x plus 3. And it's then important to note that ln of a to the b is equal to b ln a. So the b could cut down. So it becomes ln of gx equal to x plus 3 ln 4. So we can then divide through by ln 4, right? Divide through by ln 4. And then we are to obviously get x, to make x a subject. So we could move positive 3 over, and it becomes ln of g of x divided by ln 4 negative 3 is equal to x. So that implies that g inverse is going to be equal to the ln of x, right? Because after making x the subject, we then change it back, right? G of x to x. So ln of x divided by ln 4 negative 3 is, so then ask for g inverse of 1 over 16. So what is ln of 1 over 16? So g inverse of 1 over 16 will be equal to ln of 1 over 16 divided by ln 4, right? Negative 3, right? And then it's then important to note that 1 over 16 can then be written as 4 to the negative 2. 4 to the negative 2. So this is going to be ln of 4 to the negative 2 divided by ln 4, right? Negative 3, right? And then ln of 4 to the negative 2 divided by ln of 4 is same as, look over here, is same as ln of 4 to the negative 2 base 4, because that's kind of like the change of base theorem that says, look over here, that ln A over ln B is going to be equal to ln A base B, right? And then if we get this, it's going to be negative 2, because 4 to the negative 2 will give us this over here, right? So we have negative 2 as this. So since this is negative 2, and then negative 3, and negative 2, negative 3 is negative 5. So that is negative 5. Right, so let's move on to question 19. Okay. Question 19 says it's given the universal set as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So it says P are the odd numbers, and what are the odd numbers? Or odd numbers that are not divisible by 2. So we have 1, 3, 5, 7, and 9. And then Q, multiples of 3, starting with 3. We have 3, we have 6, we have 9. That's with respect to the universal set. And then R, we have the square numbers. We have 1, we have 4, we have 9. Right? Because they're perfect squares. So it then says P intercept Q intercept R, which implies what's the element you could see in the 3. What are the elements you could see? And it's only 9. We have 9, 9, 9. No other common element, so we have 9. So now it says find Q union R. So we're now merging the elements of Q with that of R. And that's going to be what? 1, 4, 9, 3, 6. We don't have to repeat, right? We're just merging the two together. So that, you get that? So 1, 4, 3, 6, 9. We're bringing them together. That's 1, 4. You put in any other, right? And that is it. And the second question says n of P intercept Q union R prime. So Q union R has been given to us as 1, 4, 9, 3, 6. And the universal set is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So we are then looking for Q union R prime. So we simply cancel the angles in Q union R. That's 1, we have 4, we have 9, we have 3, we have 6. So what's left? We have 2, we have 5, we have 7, we have 8, we have 10. So it says P intercept Q union R prime. So P is what? What's P? 1, 3, 5, 7, 9. So you can see that we're not getting the intercept, which is the common stuff between the terms. You could see 5 here, we could see 5 here, right? You could see 7 here, you could see 7 here. Right? So it's simply going to be 5, 7. And then it says n of that. So how many elements? We have 2 elements. So that's that. Question 20 says, the diagram shows 2 right angled triangles PQS and RQT. PQR and QTS are straight lines. Calculate angle QTR. Angle QTR. Right? Let's call that theta. Right? So this is the right angle. This is 90 degrees. Right? And then it's important to know the 3 most important trig ratios, which is the sine, which is simply the opposite. Sine theta is equal to the opposite divided by the adjacent. Cos theta is equal to, divided by the hypotenuse. Then cos theta is equal to the adjacent divided by the hypotenuse, while tan theta is equal to the opposite divided by the adjacent. Okay, so what do we have? Here is 18, and we don't know the length. We don't know the length of QT. So we can get the length of QT by saying, okay, let's say we don't know the length of QS. So using these trig ratios, you can see that QS is opposite 28 degrees. So QS, which is the opposite, divided by the hypotenuse, which is the longest side of the triangle, of the right angle triangle, which is 18, will be equal to sine what? 28. Sine 28. So QS is going to be equal to 18 sine 28. And 18 sine 28 is going to give us 8.45. 8.45. So that's the entire length of this QS. But we've been given that TS is 4. So in order to get QT will be equal to 8.45 negative 4, which is 4.45. So that tells us that this length over here is 4.45. Right? This is 4.45. This is 9. So we're looking for theta. So 4.45 is adjacent to this. It lies in the same line. And then 9 is opposite this. Right? So we use the tan that says opposite. So then we're therefore going to have that tan theta is equal to the opposite, which is 9, divided by the adjacent, which is 4.45. So 9 divided by 4.45 is equal to 2.022, right? And then to get theta, we get a tan inverse of 2.022. 2.022, and that's going to be 63.68, right? 63.68. And I think according to the instructions in this paper, let's move to page 1. I think it said that for angles, 1 decimal place for angles over here, 1 decimal place for angles. So we round that to 1 decimal place, right? And then we see what we have. So if we have 63.68, we could then round that up to 63.7 because 8 is greater than 5. Okay, question 21 says, solve the equation 3 tan x plus 5 equals 1 for 0 degrees less than x less than 360 degrees. So we have 3 tan 5 x plus 5 equals 1. So we could simply bring 5, subtract 5 on both sides. We then have that 3 tan x is equal to negative 4. And then dividing 3 by 3, we have that tan x is equal to negative 4 over 3. So x is going to be equal to the tan inverse of negative 4 over 3. Now, you must be very careful because the domain given to us is from 0 to 360, right? And now, there's something important here. Is the fact that we have 4 important quadrants. We have the first quadrant, the second, the third, and the fourth. It's important to note that in this quadrant, which is from 0 to 90, right, all the 3 ratios are positive, which is sine, cos, and tan are positive. Then over here, it's sine that is positive. That is 90 to 180. And then the third quadrant, we have tan as positive. And then the fourth, we have cos as positive, right? 180 to 270, 270 to 360. So that implies that in the first and the third quadrants, tan is going to be positive, while in the second and the fourth quadrants, tan is going to be negative. So all you're simply going to do on your calculator is to get the values for which it is positive, right? So the tan inverse of 4 over 3. You get your calculator, tan inverse of 4 over 3 is going to be 53.13. Right? Because this was negative for a reason. It's either it was in the second or in the fourth or both of them, right? So we have 53.13 as the base angle. So to get those ones that tend to a negative, right, it's simply going to be 180 negative 53.13 and 180 negative 53.13 is 126.87. And why is that? Right? So let me draw something for you over here. To remember this, I use stuff like this, ACCS. That tells us where each is positive, where each is negative. And now if it's within here and here, we're going to have 0 to 90. That's fine. But if it enters here, to get that angle, it's simply going to be 180 negative theta. If it's over here, it's going to be 180 plus theta. And if it's over here, it's going to be 360 negative theta, right? Such that it's now within this range, and then that gives us a negative within this range and gives us a positive. But in this case, tan is negative. So 180 minus theta will give us the sine value, and in this quadrant, tan is negative. So that's 180 negative. And then in this, which is cos, which is the fourth quadrant, we're simply going to have 360 negative 53.13. So 360 negative 53.13 is 306.87, right? So in this quadrant, tan is also negative. And what did we have? That tan x is negative of 4/3. So we got the tan inverse of positive 4/3 so that we get the original angle. And then based on the quadrant system, we can then identify those values that lead to a negative result. You get that? So x is equal to 126.87 or 306.87. Okay, let's move to question 22. It says the graph of y equals x plus 2 into x negative 1 all squared is shown on the grid. Show that x plus 2 into x negative 1 all squared can be written as y equals x cubed negative 3x plus 2. So all we simply need to do is to expand this. We have y equals x plus 2 into x negative 1 all squared. So that implies that y is equal to x plus 2 into x negative 1 into x negative 1. So we could multiply this 2 first. So x plus 2 into x negative 1 is going to be x into x plus 2 negative 1 into x plus 2. So x times this, negative 1 times this. So x times x is x squared. X times 2 is 2x. Negative 1 times x is negative x, and then negative 1 times 2 is negative 2. And then what we have is x squared plus x negative 2. And then we then multiply by this, which is x negative 1. So x times x squared is x cubed. X times x is x squared. X times negative 2 is negative 2x. Then over here, negative 1 times x squared is negative x squared. Negative 1 times x is negative x. And negative 1 times negative 2 is positive 2. So x squared, negative x squared cancels. Then negative 2x, negative x is negative 3x, and then plus 2. And that's same as this. So we've shown that. Then B says, by drawing a suitable straight line, solve the equation 2x cubed negative 5x equals 0. So we could simply draw a line and then get the values. So how do we get that line? So we're given 2x cubed negative 5x equals 0. Right? So we could simply divide by 2. So we then have that x cubed negative 5x over 2 is equal to 0. Right? And then with respect to the curve we have y equals x cubed negative 3x plus 2. Right? So we then want to generate a line from this. So you can simply take y backwards. And why are we doing this? We want to draw a line that's going to intersect with this curve, and then based on the 3 points of intersection, that gives us the solution. So we could take y over and let y be that line that's going to intersect. So that's going to be x cubed negative 3x plus 2 negative y is going to be equal to 0. And x cubed negative 5x negative over 2 is equal to 0. So we could therefore say that x cubed negative 3x plus 2 negative y is equal to x cubed negative 5x over 2. So this and this cancel. Right? This and this cancel. So we can move over y to the side and move over negative 5x plus 2 over. That becomes negative 3x plus 5x over 2. And then plus 2 equals y, because negative y has crossed over to become positive y. And then negative 3x plus 5x over 2, right? We're going to have negative 6x over 2, because this is still negative 3x, right? Then plus 5x over 2 plus 2. And negative 6x plus 5x is negative x over 2 plus 2. So that implies that the required line is y equals negative x over 2 plus 2. So once we plot this line, and then we get the points of intersection. And how do we plot this line? You can see can use the intercept form by saying at x equal to 0, what is the value? So if at x equal to 0, we have 0 over 2, which is 0, and then 0 plus 2 is 2. So at x equal to 0, the line has a point 2. So let's mark that point 2. And then we could use another point of our choice. We could say when x is equal to 2. So when x is 2, negative 2 over 2 is 1. Then 1 plus 2 is 3, right? So when x is 2, y is 1. So all you simply need to do is to get your ruler and draw a straight line. So this is not straight, but just get the point. Get a ruler and then draw a line that passes through the 2 points straight, right? And then these 3 points of intersection is going to give us the solutions, right? So if we read that, we then trace it down. So we have 1, 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, 1.4, 1.5, 1.6. So this is the first solution. And if we trace this down, what do we have? 0, right? And then if we trace this down, we have negative 1.1, negative 1.2, negative 1.3, negative 1.4, negative 1.5, negative 1.6. Could either have negative 1.5, negative 1.6, it's fine, right? So you can then come over here, and what are our solutions? X is equal to 0, negative 1.6, 1.6. Those are the 3 solutions. Then finally, the last question says x negative 5 all squared plus k equals x squared negative px negative 21. Find the value of p and the value of k. Right? So we simply expand this x negative 5 into x negative 5. X times x is x squared. Negative x times negative 5 is negative 5x, right? And then negative 5 times x is negative 5x. The negative 5 times negative 5 is positive 25. So we have x squared negative 10x plus 25, right, as this. So we have x squared negative 10x plus 25 plus k equals x squared negative px negative 21. So we then simply compare. So if we compare the x part to this part, right, we compare negative 10, and you can see that x squared and x squared, they have the same coefficients, right? So everything is equal. So negative px, negative 10x. So negative px is equal to negative 10x. So this cancels. So if we divide through by negative 1, we have that p is 10. Right? And then we have the constant part, 25 plus k, and then over here it's negative 21. So you could therefore say that 25 plus k is going to be equal to negative 21. And then subtracting 25 on both sides, we have negative 46 as k. So that implies that p is 10, k is negative 46. Thank you so much for watching this video. We've successfully completed Cambridge Igcse paper October November, right? Paper 2 extended 058021. Thank you so much. Please do well to like this video, right? Share this video to those that need it, right? Comments. Remember the question where I said if you don't get that question and the sequences, comment proof, right? Thanks once again and have a nice day. I want you to subscribe so that you get more videos on extensive solutions to papers like this. Thanks once again and have a nice day.